Hi, it's Lynn Watts here with Wyatt the Wonder Dog Books. And today I want to talk about motivation. Well, there's a topic that I would be willing to bet you have run into in your school. I bet you have teachers all the time that refer students to you or complain to you about students in their classroom who are not motivated. And the underlying message is you need to fix that problem, right? Um, and I can think of many times when I had students referred to me that were huge, huge challenges. Generally speaking, teachers had already done everything they could think of to motivate that student, and now they were hopeful that I had a secret magic wand, I think, to motivate them. The fact of the matter is that motivation is very complicated. I think we look at it as kind of simple when we're looking at children, but honestly, if you think about yourself and you think about motivation, you can see that it is a very complicated topic. There are many things that you are probably highly motivated to do. There are other things that you know you should do, and you are simply not motivated. And sometimes you do them anyway, and then we have to ask why and how. And then some of those things you just let them go, or maybe you give a half-hearted attempt or even a big attempt, and you feel like you don't make progress, and so you decide that it's not worth it. So there's a lot of things to say about motivation. The fact of the matter is that we're all motivated. It's just that we're not always motivated for what other people want us to do. And that is certainly true of our students. It's also true that we are motivated both intrinsically and extrinsically. Intrinsically meaning those things that are just naturally motivating for us. They're things that we have an interest in, things that we really like doing. For instance, I love to read. I enjoyed reading from the first time I was introduced to words as a young student, and nobody had to encourage me to read. In fact, I used to get in trouble for spending all my time reading and always having my nose in a book, not at school, but at home. So I was highly motivated to read. On the other hand, I'm sure you run into lots of students who do not want to read. They can't sit still long enough to read. They don't know how to read well enough, or they haven't learned, it's too challenging. There's a lot of reasons behind it. So that's intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is when somebody gives us a reward and hopes that that pushes us in the direction of accomplishing something, and along the way developing some motivation. So, an example of that might be that for an adult, you hate to go to the gym, but you decide you're going to give yourself a reward of some sort every time you go to the gym. So a reward can be as simple as putting a check in a box and getting a little hit of dopamine that you actually accomplished that. Or a reward might be that you have a competition with a friend and you're keeping up with who goes to the gym, a number of times in a row or something like that. The thing about extrinsic motivation is sometimes the problem is that it's not lasting. What you hope is that eventually you going to the gym becomes intrinsically motivation. In other words, there are things about it that you like and actually enjoy and become, we could say, kind of addicted to. And once that happens, it doesn't matter if you put a check in the box or a sticker on a chart or, reward yourself with ice cream. It's rewarding just for doing it. You are motivated intrinsically, not extrinsically. Well, that's a long discussion about motivation, but what is it that we need to do to motivate students when they are not motivated? Right? We're not worried about the ones who are motivated to learn, right? The ones that we are concerned about are the ones that don't seem motivated. So I think the first thing to do is to spend a great deal of time talking with that student about what gets in the way of them being motivated and what they are motivated for. All right. So, what do they like to do? How do they like to spend their time? And then once you have a better understanding of them, their background, their home life, their interests, their talents, their skills, all these kinds of things, then I think you can actually perhaps set up an environment that is motivating. So there are some studies, some books that relate key characteristics of a motivating environment. And there are really three things. I'm going to just kind of cover them pretty quickly here. The first is autonomy. And the more that we feel that we have autonomy, in other words, we have choices that we can make, the more motivated we generally are. So, for instance, if a student has a choice about how they accomplish an assignment, maybe, let's say you're trying to motivate a student to read and they really don't like reading. So if they have a choice about what to read, and choice obviously doesn't mean anything in the library, it might simply mean this book or that book. All right. It might be a choice about where they read. Do they sit at their desk? Is there a reading corner? It might be how they read. Do they read silently? Do they read out loud? Do they have a partner and they take turns reading? Are there some ways or things about reading that in themselves can be motivating and they can make a choice about that? So autonomy simply means they have a choice and a voice and understand. That's one reason it's important to understand how to best work with a student and not assuming that everybody needs to do it the same way. So providing some choices gives kids a greater sense of ownership and they can be more engaged. Number two is relatedness. And relatedness is the sense of connection. So many times we are motivated because of our relationship, our connection, because we want to either please somebody, we want to be involved, spend time with someone. In my example of, let's say, not wanting to go to the gym, if I go to the gym with a friend, then the connection part becomes the motivating part. So perhaps, again, you have a student that you're somewhat challenged with reading or simply doesn't like to do it. Again, connection can make a difference. Let's say you have a reading buddy. Let's say you partner with a higher class. You partner third graders with first graders, and they each have partners and they read to each other. The connection can make a difference and can be more motivating. So looking at how to create community, connection, perhaps it's like a reading club or a book club, or it's there's just lots of different ways to create connection with group work or partner work in a classroom. So connection can be highly motivating. And then finally is competence. If a student is having a lot of trouble reading, then they're certainly not going to want to do it. And so analyzing where that trouble is coming from, if they simply haven't had the exposure that they need, whether there is a learning disability, taking a look at all the different avenues in terms of why this child maybe doesn't feel competent is going to be important. And so the more competent, or at least the more capable, we could say we feel about meeting someone's expectations or classroom expectations or standards, then the more motivated we are to not only fulfill that expectation, but also to excel at that. Another example I might use was, I think as a child, I was always very challenged by physical activity. PE was probably my least favorite thing to do. Now, and a lot of that had to do with not feeling competent in that area. So if someone had taken me and said, you know what, we're going to work individually with you and get you to where swinging a bat or catching a ball isn't so challenging, and I began to feel more competent, I probably would have volunteered more or participated more. So I think you can see what a difference, if you think of areas in your own life where perhaps you don't feel competent. And so what do? Probably you either, if it's important enough to you, you find a way to get extra help or get tutored or learn how to do that, or you say, well, that's not important. I'm going to do something else. So I think we need to, look at motivation as the complex thing that it is and make sure that we take time to really evaluate what's going on and work with teachers to create environments that are motivating rather than focusing on just an individual student and saying, how can I manipulate this person with stickers and stars and treasure boxes so that they will hopefully, put an effort into the work they need to do in school. So I hope that is helpful in terms of motivation, and that perhaps it'll give you a little different perspective and some different tools to put in your motivation toolbox. As always, thanks so much for all the important work that you do with young students, and thanks for listening.